In season 9 of Trailer Park Boys, we saw Jim's ideal version of the park where it's dry and Ricky isn't allowed in and Julian's on his way out, right? Nobody liked that season. In season 10, we get to briefly see what Sunnyvale will be like if Julian was in charge. And surprise, surprise, it's just as fucking bad. And none of the fans like this version of the park either. It feels like the SwearNet version of the show, the Netflix version of the show, just can't win. But we're going to talk about it in a little bit more detail today. It's important to note, Julian's Sunnyvale does not work because it is lawless. As much as we would like, within the confines of the show, for the boys to get everything they want, to work outside of the law inside the park, it's just not copacetic with real life, okay? Have to find a way to coexist with the normal surrounding community, not cause too much trouble, so as to upset the balance. Julian doesn't have anybody paying lot fees, so he hasn't got any money to keep up the upkeep of the park. It's just not sustainable. The park, in like a meta way, can't work without both Julian and Jin. They are the yin and yang of the park. They are at opposite ends of the spectrum. Jim keeps everything above board, but Julian keeps the people in the park satisfied, because they feel like he's an advocate for them, even if he's not necessarily the best advocate, as we have explored in previous reviews. I'm actually just going off on one already, I do apologise for that. Should we get into talking about Julian? Julian, this season, technically owns Sunnyvale, carrying on from last season, and he has Bar there. Everything's going really well for him, supposedly, until Barb gets out of jail and tells him that she's going to contest his ownership of the park, because it's definitely illegal that, you know, we got Jim to sign the park over when he was drunk, and with this really shady lawyer who we will see more of this season. Julian actually tries to make the park private property during this season, which is interesting because, like I've already mentioned, the people in the park, and especially Julian and the boys, have always wanted the park to be outside of the law and operate as its own society. Like, even the people who aren't involved directly in crime in the park, they want to keep the police out and they want to keep the peace in the park and just have a normal, quiet life. The park as its own little community has always been a theme since the beginning, and I think that it's interesting that we went in here and Julian actually tried to make that like a physical reality. I think that's interesting. I actually feel like Julian feels a lot more human this season. There's been a canonical break in between the seasons where he's been having a great time owning the park and getting everything he wants. So interpretations could be that he's gone soft and he's out of practice from having it so easy for so long. Or maybe, you know, the guys are getting on now and the series itself acknowledges that. So the angle could be, oh, Julian's losing touch because he's old. So maybe just like a personal interpretation from me, like maybe Julian's just got cocky because he's finally got everything he wants, and so he's got worse at hiding his manipulations. Yeah, he just seems a lot softer this season. He's like the first to apologise after he and the boys have an argument, and I just feel like seeing him say sorry is not something we see him do a lot unless it's for his own personal gain. Obviously, he does need the boys' help this season to raise money for the lawsuit with Barb. But I don't know, the apology feels like it comes from a sincere place, almost. I don't know. I've always talked about how Julian's this character who I just can't quite pin down his motives, and that's something that I actually really like about him. He's also a lot more sympathetic this season. Even though he didn't deserve getting everything he wanted at the end of last season, it's always a bummer to see somebody lose out on their dreams, and that's what's happening here. He's also very clearly getting done over by this shady lawyer who he brings back to help him out. He deserves this individually, to be having this money taken off him and to be having somebody take advantage of him like he's taken advantage of so many other people in the past. But because in the narrative, Julian is working to save the park, we want him to win. I also let Julian have some like cute moments this season. His character feels like it's getting softer somehow as the seasons go on, and it's something that I appreciate. In this one, he doesn't let Bubbles take a gun on a job because he knows that's just going to end badly. And there's a point at the end where Ricky is not present and Julian just admits to everybody that he can't roll joints, which is just something that I feel like he wouldn't normally admit to. He does have some other softer moments as well, but I'll talk about them when we get further into it. So Ricky, before everything starts going to shit, is absolutely thriving in Julian's Sunnyvale. He's got his own drugstore and he's making his own stock, experimenting, making new flavours, right? And Corey's his guinea pig. He's living in an actual trailer instead of in his car, although he does still sleep in the car sometimes because he just likes it. And he's with his family. He and Lucy are together. They're living with Trin and Jacob and their kid, and he and Lucy are trying for a baby. The only thing that Ricky has ever wanted since the beginning, okay, is to be happy with his family in Sunnyvale, and he's finally got it, even for this brief amount of time, and I just love that. Ricky's storylines in the series usually revolve around his family and being with Lucy, but I feel like this is the first season where his family has been a real unit and it felt like they've had problems together instead of just Ricky trying to be a part of his own family. Him and Lucy are so cute this season. I feel like they're finally the power couple that they were always destined to be, okay? We've got moments like where Ricky explains that he's going to go and do a job through the euphemism of the Burrs in the Sunny Woods. He just lets him ramble about it even though it's very obvious what he's talking about. Lucy makes Ricky take her and Sarah on a job because she doesn't want Ricky to get in trouble. Julian doesn't want them to come, but Ricky kind of can't argue with them. Under his breath to Julian, he's saying how much he doesn't want them to come, and then he turns around and he's like, "You girls ready to go break the law?" And they're like going, "Woo, let's go!" Like, it's very like passenger princess energy from Lucy and Sarah. The guys do a couple of jobs to try and raise money for this lawsuit, but they can't get any, partly because they're being done over by the lawyer and partly because the jobs that they're doing are trash. And we get to the two turnips in heat argument, which I absolutely love. Not only is it funny, especially when Ricky says it takes the turnips to a whole nother level. I love the fact that usually the guys would let a Rickyism like this slide, but because everything is high tension and everybody's panicking about losing the park, it causes this big arguments. They couldn't possibly talk about what they're really upset about, right guys? Ricky gets put into another one of those impossible dilemmas again this season where he and the guys get into a bit of trouble and Lucy forbids breaking the law any further, okay? And so the guys then convince Ricky to give them Trinity's wedding money because she and Jacob have been saving to get married. Ricky's got loads of iconic moments this season. In the very first episode, he has "The Hulk's a big green pussy, I'm mushroom man." He poses the philosophical question of lying. Lucy says he can't break the law, so he goes as the getaway driver. So he's technically not breaking the law, he's just there while the other guys are breaking it. He insists to himself that he's going to believe that he's not there, and as long as nobody finds out that he was there, then it's true. He says that a lie is not a lie until somebody finds out. Everybody says Ricky's not smart, guys, but sometimes he do be posing philosophical questions, and I love it. I love how Ricky gets, they go to hold up a truck, and everybody has a kerchief over their face, and Ricky gets a special houndstooth one. He has houndstooth everything this season, it's great. There's this bit where they get one over on the police, where they've just robbed a house, and they pretend they're looking for a lost dog, and after they've got away with it, there's this look that Ricky gives the camera, and I just fucking love it. I love how smirky this man can be sometimes. And then his fight with Randy in episode 2 is probably one of my favourites in the entire series over the lot fees. I just absolutely love it. I think it's really funny. Not a lot on Bubbles this season. Bubbles has kind of receded back into being a background character after the trauma of the Swayze Express damaged him for the rest of his life. This season he has an identity crisis over some kids who call him a nerd in a parking lot. He starts dressing in a way that he thinks is cool, and the other guys have to convince him that he's a cool guy however he dresses. Ricky is right when he says that being a nerd isn't about dressing like a nerd, it's about being a nerd, but there's nothing wrong with being a nerd anyway, so I don't think Bubbles really has anything to worry about. We all think he's cool as fuck. He's preparing for an open mic at the beginning of the season. His music becomes a bigger part of the narrative in these later seasons, and I like that. I like the fact that Bubbles is a musical icon. Speaking of icons, iconic moments for Bubbles this season is when he gets Snoop Dogg's belly, which I'll go further into in a little bit, but he says, "Who's got your bizzle?" when he does it, and I think that's funny. And then the bit where he's high in the courtroom at the end, and the guy tells everybody to shut up, and he's like, "Okay, Jeffrey Dahmer." I say that all the time. I'm gonna do most of Randy and Leahy's storyline here before I finish up the season, because I feel like they're just kind of removed from the main narrative in a weird way. They just kind of come together with everybody else in the finale. Randy is finally the trailer park supervisor, okay? But he still, for fuck's sake, has not got the respect that he thinks that this job would get him, right? That's because we're in Julian's Sunnyvale, and in Julian's Sunnyvale, the trailer park supervisor just has to keep the police out. And the way that Randy keeps the police out is by doing them sexual favors. So this job that he has been idolizing as the ultimate sign, right, that he has made it and that he's no longer Smokey from the streets, has ended up just being the same thing as him being Smokey from the streets. He and Mr. Leahy are on a break, and Mr. Leahy is living in his own place in a separate part of Nova Scotia, okay? He's taken this extended break from Randy because he wants to avoid the business at the park, because it means he's having a happy, normal life and that he can maintain normal levels of pissness with his little breathalyzer, which is still being an alcoholic, but at least he's a functioning alcoholic and he's not a gibbering mess like he is when he gets involved in Julian's schemes, right? People throughout the season keep telling him he's weak, and I think that's ironic because in real life staying away from Julian and the business at the park would probably be the clever, insane thing to do. It's interesting to note that in this season Mr. Leahy no longer refers to himself as the Licker, and the Licker is not even necessarily an alter ego anymore. It's this godlike guiding force that is separate from him. The Licker is almost equated to fate in this season, and I think that that's interesting when compared to everybody telling him that he's a loser and he's a weak man now, because it's like, is this his internalized self-hatred telling him that he can't even be this iconic, confident man when he's had to drink anymore? I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I also want to just say that it kind of serves him right, to be fair, because he was always telling Ricky that he was a loser in the earlier seasons, and Ricky proved him wrong every fucking time, and yet here he is now, thinking that he's got his life together, and everybody keeps telling him that he's a fucking loser because he's not as drunk as fuck. Irony. So Barb comes and infiltrates and takes over his trailer with her little crew. She forces interactions with Randy because he goes to him for help, and then they go to Randy and they give him titty twisters until they turn purple, and he goes to Mr. Leahy and Mr. Leahy rubs cream on his nipples in a scene that is weirdly filled with sexual tension and also massively hilarious. At the end of the season, Randy decides that he doesn't want to be the supervisor anymore, and he turns up to the big climax to ask for Jim back. And even though we saw the beginnings of this plotline at the beginning of the season, I feel like we didn't spend enough time with either of these guys for it not to feel rushed and kind of shoved in at the end, right? And I don't know whether that's just my personal opinion, because you know I love to see a little bit more Randy and Leahy, and maybe I feel slighted in that way. So let me know if you have a different opinion. I would love to hear it. We'll talk a little bit about Barb, and then I will round out the season and tell you how it all ends. Barb shows up out of jail with Donna and Candy, and she turns up and threatens Julian with the court case, and she says 10 sexy days, Julian, and it's her emulating Leahy to show Julian that she is the person to worry about now, yes, and it's showing us as an audience that last season she conquered her dark feminine energy, okay, and she got right in there, but now, because all of her soft ways of doing things in previous seasons haven't worked, Barb is going from being a covert bitch to being a full-on bitch. She's in her masculine energy now, okay? I like this. I like the progression of the character, and I also like that the masculine energy works and she gets what she wants at the end, but she feels bad about it, just like all the other men in the show, because the toxic masculine way is just not the way to go about it, Barb. Were you not listening to my analysis of the last season? Okay. My notable episodes for this season were just the last 3 episodes of the season, because a lot of stuff happens. The season, again, is very cohesive. It all makes one big story. There's not really any one-off episodes. So I'm just going to take you through all of them and explain what happens as we go along, basically. So episode 8, we are going to see Bubbles perform at the Legion, okay? Some celebrity cameos this season, I should mention. The boys were on Jimmy Kimmel. And then Snoop Dogg shows up, and apparently he's going to buy the park, which is great. That's going to solve all of Julian's troubles, right? Jim forces Dancer to relapse with him because Dancer has been working in this army supplies store and he's sober. Jim turns up with a gun. It's pretty cool.
What is it, Jim? I'm back on the liquor. And soon you will be too, bud.
Not a chance, Jim. I'm not drinking that.
Oh, yeah? Guess what? You fucking well are. Drink.
Meet my straight edge boyfriend on my birthday. So this guy shows up. He's another celebrity, but I have no idea who the fuck he is. Apparently his name's Tom. I'm not good with celebrities. That's not an insult in any way, by the way. He wants to shag Lucy for 10 grand, but he tells Julian first. Julian tells Sarah that he only wants 5 grand because Julian's going to take 5 grand for himself. And then Sarah tells Lucy that it's only 4 grand because she's going to take a grand for herself. It's funny. I do see the humor in it. But there's something I just find so gross about this, because it's obviously something that could happen in real life, like this rich celebrity guy turning up to this family who aren't well off and offering them this deal that seems too good to be true, and all she has to do is sleep with him. It's gross. It is gross, and I find it really gross that Julian, like, obviously Julian was going to skim some money off, right? But a whole, 5 grand, Julian? Really? So when Ricky punches Tom when he finds out about this and then tries to punch Julian, I'm like, good. I wish he did punch him, because that was gross and sleazy. Obviously, I'm not expecting the Trailer Park Boys to be a massively feminist show, okay, but usually it doesn't make me feel gross like this. I don't know. I've really been feeling soft for Julian this season, and he starts letting himself down here in a big way. Anyway, Bubbles gets to perform with Snoop Dogg at the Legion, which is very nice. We all love a Bubbles win. And then Snoop tells off the kids who called him a nerd, when they ask for his autograph outside. So after all that grossness, at least there's a little bit of a happy ending, right? Episode 9 is the penultimate episode, but it acts as the big climax for me. This is the one where everything's happening. Ricky was so sad all last episode after finding out about the Lucy thing, especially after finding out that she actually considered sleeping with this Tom guy. They have this chat together at the beginning of this episode because they've talked about it and decided that it's okay, because as we all know, famously Ricky isn't asked about Lucy shagging anybody else, it's about being in love. Decided to do it for the full 10 grand, which is, I mean, at least they'll get the full amount, right? Ricky says something about, I keep thinking about you looking at him with that look you get in your eye. And it's, oh my god, this, like, it's such a sleazy situation. Why do I find it romantic? Is this backwards wholesome? Is this my backwards wholesome concept where it's like, in any other situation, the two of them are faced with this tough decision that they make as a couple, and they make this sacrifice for the good of their family and for the money for their daughter's wedding. If it was anything other than sleeping with this sleazy Tom guy, that'd be cute, right? Julian borrows 10 grand from Snoop Dogg, meaning he takes 10 grand from Snoop Dogg. He owes Ricky a grand, and he gives him the grand plus 50 quid. And it makes me really mad. And I know, guys, I know, he's trying to save the park, right? Fair enough. But he's not trying to save the park for anybody else's gain except his own. He's only doing it to save his own skin. And also, it's frustrating because he's doing it in all the wrong ways. Like, he's going to this lawyer who he knows ain't shit. He should be smarter than this. Julian's acting dumb this season, going to this lawyer and doing jobs to try and get the money for this lawsuit. And then he goes and fucking tries to bribe the judge with this stupid shitty lawyer who skims money off the top, just like Julian does to everybody else. He deserves it individually, but we want the park to win. We want the park to win, so we want Julian to win. The narrative of Trailer Park Boys constantly tricks us into rooting for Julian, and it's very sneaky, guys. I see what you're doing. So obviously the bribe doesn't work, and Bob gets the park, but Julian doesn't want to tell Snoop Dogg because he wants to fleece him out of more money. I know that Snoop Dogg's rich, but he's also, like, such a cool dude, okay? But, like, why would you want to take money away from Snoop Dogg? Like, he's been so nice to you, bro, this entire season, and you want to fleece him. It's mean. And also, Bubbles has created this relationship with Snoop, so he's also jeopardizing that friendship and the place that Bubbles could go with his music. Okay, I was mad. I was mad when he wanted to steal the money from Snoop Dogg. Obviously, I was frustrated because he was being a thick bitch, just going to this lawyer and just being an idiot all season. And then he gets annoyed and frustrated because he loses the park to Bob, and he gets back to the park, and Randy comes out from his little supervisor's hut, and Julian gets out of the car and he just shoves him, and he's so mean to him. He's so mean to Randy for no reason, and I just hate that. I hate it when people are mean to Randy and there was no reason for it except that Julian's frustrated about something that isn't Randy's fault, and he has no respect for Randy because nobody has respect for Randy, and I also hate that. So I'm pissed off. Julian was gaining some ground with me this season, and then these last few episodes I'm just like, fuck him. Fuck him. So Jim and Dancer turn up, and Jim wants to shoot Julian because, as Jim puts it, they can't both exist at the same time. Neither can live while the other survives. It's Harry Potter, okay? Jim's nearly there. Like I said at the beginning, he and Julian are the yin and the yang. They're the opposite sides of the park. Jim is law and Julian is chaos, okay? And Jim, at this point in his life, still, after 10 seasons, okay, hasn't accepted the part of himself that likes the chaos that Julian brings, that understands that stopping the boys from doing their petty crimes and focusing so heavily on the boys, it gives him purpose in life. That is what really gives him purpose. It wasn't his fucking police job, okay? It wasn't being trailer park supervisor. It's not even, unfortunately, his relationship with Randy. It's these boys and his unhealthy obsession with them. And you know what? That's fine. Because the boys, they can't exist without him either, clearly. They need him to keep the park in order so that they can stay there and do whatever the fuck they're doing. He and Julian both need to come to this conclusion, but it is really funny that Julian is just not even on this philosophical path right now, because Leahy turns up and he's like, you've dragged me back in, Julian, and Julian's just like, well, I literally don't even know what the fuck is happening right now. It's great. Julian just could not give a fuck about his fated entanglements, okay? He just wants money. So, of course, a gun has been introduced in this scene, and Ricky gets shot, and he basically dies. They kill him off for 3 weeks, right as, on the other side of town, Lucy, who was gone to shag the Tom guy, refuses to shag him because, guys, can I get some snaps? She finally loves Ricky, okay? It has finally happened after 10 seasons. She is finally, because like famously, obviously, Ricky doesn't care about sex. It doesn't matter if she sleeps with this guy, but it's within Lucy. Lucy can't sleep with somebody else because she finally loves Ricky. They're finally a family. It's finally all happening, guys. And he's dead. Obviously, they don't kill him off forever. We get to episode 10, and Trinity is having a wedding in Ricky's hospital room, where he hasn't had brain activity for 3 weeks. Jules is on really good behaviour. He's acting really sweet and nice to everybody. He gets Bubbles' belly in this really silly way that I feel like Julian's character would never have done before because he's meant to be this big, macho, mysterious man. Barb has gone dry. She's no longer being a bitch. She's no longer hanging out with Donna and Candy because they were a bad influence on her, supposedly. She's back on a covert bitch bullshit, okay? She's back to her old ways. She's kicking everybody out of the park. Julian comes to her and apologizes and asks that she just kick him out and let everybody else stay. I don't know how real this was from him, but obviously if Barb agrees to it, then he's gonna have to go, so we must have at least have accepted that consequence. But at the same time, it's Julian, so we can kind of maybe interpret it as he thought, oh, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do this really selfless gesture in front of Barb and she's gonna forgive me and tell me that me and everybody else can stay. Leahy, after shooting Ricky, has gone really depressed. Barb turns up to give him his half of the park, his ownership of the park deed thing, and he refuses it. And we find out, he goes to see Ricky in the hospital and he does this drunken confession, and we find out that Leahy is Ricky's real dad. Okay. I honestly, guys, I can't remember whether this is real or not. Chat, is this real? I honestly can't remember how this plotline concludes. I can't remember whether this is real or whether Leahy got duped somehow. So this is going to be interesting when I rewatch this season, to be honest. But while we think it's real for now, while it's being presented to us as real for now, we're going to discuss Leahy and Ricky's relationship over the seasons with this new context of Leahy having this whole time known that he's Ricky's dad. Why has he been treating Ricky like shit? I don't know. In this speech, he kind of says, oh, the shit apple doesn't fall far from the tree, boy, because Ricky is like addicted to weed, I guess, and Leahy's a drunk. But you know, maybe if Leahy kind of stepped up as a father or tried to kind of guide Ricky in the right direction instead of just outwardly hating him for his entire life, maybe Ricky wouldn't have turned out the way he did. But I don't care because I love Ricky the way he is. Fuck Leahy. Ray all the way, baby. I find this revelation. I think that people don't like this revelation. I have a feeling that that's the kind of consensus that I have seen in the fandom, but I kind of vibe with it right now. I think it's silly, and I know that it's gonna do the Darth Leahy moments in the next season, right? I remember this, so I look forward to that. Anyway, Ricky is of course revived by the power of marijuana. Randy gives him this big hug and starts crying and saying he loves him, and he makes this big speech. And I cheered when I was rewatching this because I was like, oh my god, they brought back the I learned something today moment. It was something that I really liked about the earlier seasons, where at the end of the episode they would have somebody make this big morality speech as if they hadn't just been breaking the law the whole episode. And Randy does it here. He's like, oh, all of us are family and I love all of you. Julian takes that opportunity to ask Barb again if she'll give them all the second chance and let them stay in Sunnyvale. And she agrees and says, but on certain conditions, obviously implying that Julian has to leave still. We can see that Julian's upset by this, but my man just leaves without saying goodbye, which I think is a massive, like, why does he do that? Why does he just leave without saying goodbye? And then the episode ended and I was like, is that how it ends? I was like, I can't believe they made such a bold move as to have the series ending with Julian leaving. And I feel like just because I watched them back to back every time I watched them, I've just never registered before. That's it. Julian leaves. And that could have been the end of it. What if he left forever? What if that was how the whole thing ended? That would have been fucking... I mean, Barb is right. Julian is the entire problem. But as we have been talking about, you know, Leahy needs Julian around to be sane, and so we can't have that, and we need him to come back next season. We need peace to be restored to the park, guys. But Jim does get his job back as well, we see in a little montage, so he's been restored back to his original place, his rightful place in the park. Some notes for this season. Jacob has gone back to working like 5 jobs to afford the wedding, and we actually find out that he pays most of the bills in the trailer, which is really funny. Jacob is actually secretly the man of the house, I guess. It's a fun callback to the beginning of the series whenever they went to anywhere outside of the town, it seemed like Jacob was the only person working in any of these places. I love Sarah and Lucy's reaction to Snoop Dogg when they scream at him when he first comes into their shop. Absolutely how me and my mates would react to meeting Snoop Dogg. Very relatable. Question, why don't people like Candy? I feel like I see a lot of hate for her on the internet, and she's just really not that big of a presence in the season, I find. She's more kind of just Barb's attack dog. She doesn't even really have that many lines, and the ones she does have, I don't find particularly annoying or anything. So I'm just wondering if anybody wants to tell me why you hate Candy so much. I'd love to know. It's not that I particularly like her or anything, but I just don't find her that annoying. I definitely don't find her as annoying as Dancer. I wasn't happy when he came back this season. I thought he could have maybe just been a one-off character, to be honest. I don't feel like he really added much to the storyline with Jim. I feel like they could have done without him this season. The boys are kind of a brand this season. Like I said, Ricky has houndstooth everything. You can see the Lickerman's alcohol that is their brand that they use all the time. See the Swernet logo on the van when they're pulling up in the beginning and things like that. I feel like this kind of like corporatized vibe that comes from the Netflix season doesn't gel with some people, and I can appreciate that considering the series' humble beginnings, but I kind of don't hate it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I like the fact that it feels bigger. I like the fact that the boys are getting the appreciation they deserve, and I like the fact that Snoop Dogg turned up. I fucking do. Even though it did kind of feel like the celebrity cameos, the narrative kind of ground to a halt to kind of be like, OMG, Snoop Dogg is here, but he did serve a purpose in the narrative. It wasn't just that he was there and things were happening around him. There are no standout episodes this season. I don't have any favorites, but I think that's because it all, again, works so well as one big story. It's hard to point to one in particular that I enjoyed above the rest. I think at this point, I am ready to admit that I do obviously enjoy the earlier seasons a lot more, but I just feel like it's not that big of a deal. Who knows, maybe I might like the next 2 seasons loads. Who knows? There's a lot of, I'm going to end on this note, right, there is a lot of, the park is the people in the park, we're all family this season, and I'm not taking the piss out of that. I love it because that's the whole theme that I've been talking about from the beginning, right? I feel like it's meta, bro. I feel like the show is constantly trying to tell the characters what we as an audience want them to know, and the characters just don't want to hear about it. And I love that because I find it frustrating. And you all know that I love to be frustrated by these guys. It's like last season when the boys all wanted Dancer out, and we all obviously wanted Dancer out and for Leahy to be back on the liquor. This season, I do see Julian get a lot more hate than I would usually see him get, seeing as people like to idolize him, right? Very salty about that because they say he's being mean to Leahy as if he's ever liked him and it wasn't all just a ploy to get him on side. Because we as an audience know that the park is a family and we want the park to be together so that we can get a hilarious season of Trailer Park Boys. That's why people in the narrative, including fucking Snoop Dogg, keep telling them all that they're a family and they need to stick together because that's what the audience wants. And it at this point, the Trailer Park Boys is a tragedy because nobody in this narrative wants to be anywhere near each other, and we as an audience keep forcing them together for another season. That ended on a bit of a dark note, but if anybody is watching this, I hope you have enjoyed it, and I will see you for season 11.